You go ahead and turn your Bibles to the book of Luke chapter 19. Luke chapter 19 is where we're going to be this morning. We're picking up on our series on the parables of Jesus. We've been doing this for a little while, and we'll be doing it for a little while longer. Okay, so this is the time of year when a lot of people go on vacation. So imagine that you are on a trip, that you decide you need somebody to take care of your property, to kind of house it for you, to mow your lawn and to water your plants and let your dog out and just take care of your property. And so you talk to your nephew, Stuart, who's a pretty good kid, and he likes your dog, and he could use a little bit of money. He's a good enough kid. And so you think, okay, this is a pretty good idea. And so you go on your trip, you go on vacation, and everything's going swimmingly until you return home. And you turn onto your street, and you see that inexplicably it is packed with cars. Both sides of the street packed with cars. As you drive up closer to your home, you realize all these cars are here for my house. Everybody that drove these cars is on my property. You drive up closer and you see that the property is absolutely packed, filled with people. More people than you've ever seen at your house. There are people in the driveway, there's people in the yard, there's people in the garage, there's people in the house, there's people on the roof. You get up and you park as close as you possibly can to the house, which is still like half a mile down the road because of all the cars. And you walk over to your house, and you can see that the front yard looks like the site of a truck pull because it's all dug up and all the sod is messed up, and you can see mud is everywhere, tracked all over your property and into your house and on your carpet and in your furniture. You finally walk in the door, and your dog that inexplicably smells like beer and is painted red, white, and blue runs out the door. You walk inside and you see that all of your living room furniture has been rearranged to make room for what appears to be a WWF tournament going on in your living room. You walk into the kitchen and everything that's supposed to be in your refrigerator is on the counter because apparently there's somebody in your refrigerator. You realize, you look out in the backyard and you see that there's a bunch of high schoolers around a keg, and you realize that the people that are up on the roof are drunk and trying to figure out who can get closest to the edge without falling off. And then you finally go down to the basement and you find Stuart, your nephew that you put in charge of your house, in charge of your property. You find Stuart, and he's there in the basement. The music's blaring. He's got 6 TVs hooked up to your neighbor's satellite feed all around him, watching 6 different football games, and he's taking bets on the ball games. He's got thousands of dollars stacked up in neat little piles in front of him. In one, he's got a big smile on his face. He's smoking a $200 Cuban cigar. In one arm, he's got an AK-47. In the other arm, he's got a stripper named Luscious. And as soon as you walk in the room, into the basement, you pull the plug on the surge protector, and everything turns off. The music shuts down. The TVs are off. And within seconds, silence. Stuart makes eye contact with you. And everybody waits to hear, what is he going to say? Luke chapter 19. Beginning in verse number 12. He, this is Jesus telling the story, said therefore, a certain nobleman went into a far country to receive for himself a kingdom and to return. And he called his 10 servants and delivered them 10 pounds and said unto them, occupy till I come. But his citizens hated him and sent a message after him, saying, we will not have this man to reign over us. And it came to pass that when he is returned, having received the kingdom, then he commanded these servants to be called unto him, to whom he had given the money, that he might know how much every man had gained by trading. Then came the first, saying, Lord, thy pound hath gained 10 pounds. And he said unto him, well, thou good and faithful servant, because thou hast been faithful in very little, have thou authority over 10 cities. And the second came, saying, Lord, thy pound hath gained 5 pounds. And he said likewise to him, be thou also over 5 cities. And another came, saying, Lord, behold, here is thy pound, which I have kept laid up in a napkin. For I feared thee, because thou art an austere man. Thou takest up that thou laidest not down, and reapest that thou didst not sow. And he said unto him, out of thine own mouth will I judge thee, thou wicked servant. Thou knowest that I was an austere man, taking up that I laid not down, and reaping that I did not sow. Wherefore then gavest thou not my money into the bank, that at thy coming I might have required mine own with usury or interest? And he said unto them that stood by, take from him the pound, and give it to him that hath 10 pounds. And they said unto him, Lord, he hath 10 pounds. For I said unto you, that every one which hath shall be given, and from him that hath not, even that he hath, shall be taken away from him. But those mine enemies which would not that I should reign over them, bring hither, and slay them before me. And when he had thus spoken, he went before, ascending up into Jerusalem. In my Bible, I've got the words occupy till I come in verse number 3 underlined. That's what this whole sermon is really about. Occupy until I come. Back to our story about your nephew Stuart. You trusted him to take care of your property. You put him in charge of your house, your lawn, your dog, everything that you had. And when you said to him, I want you to house it for me, I want you to take care of my property, you trusted him to take care of it as though it was his own. To do everything with it that you would do with it if you were there. Did he do a good job? No, he most certainly did not. You told Stuart, your nephew, occupy till I come back. Now, inexplicably, it doesn't make any sense to me why, I mean, it's my story, but why Stuart had this party, and he invited all these people, and things got so out of control on the night that you were to return. It's not as though this was some kind of surprise. He knew that you were returning. When Christ put you in charge of your life, when he told you as his follower, occupy till I come, we need to understand that there is coming a day when our Savior, when our Master, when our nobleman, when our King will return. And that should change the way that we live. That should change the way we take care of what God has given us. In this story, you've got a king that goes off into a far country. He's not there to take care of his own kingdom, his own land. And he has 10 servants, and he gives each one of them 10 pounds. Now, a pound is just a measure of weight there. The original Greek word is mina, which is basically 3 months' salary, which is a lot of money. You know, for me, it's like $4,000. And so he gives each one of these men $4,000, more or less. It doesn't matter. It's a large amount of money, regardless. $4,000. And he says, occupy till I come. I want you to take care of my land and my property, my kingdom, and I want you to take care of these 10 pounds, these $4,000 that I'm giving to each one of you, $40,000 divided among 10. He says, I want you to take care of this, and I want you to use it and sell it and buy it and trade with it and invest it. And when I get back, I'm going to take a report of what you did, not with your property, but with my property. Now, the first man, when he came back, the first servant said, well, I have bought and sold and traded, and I have turned your pound into 10 pounds. Sounds like what most of us go through the winter. We turn 1 pound into 10 pounds. Isn't that about right? It is for me anyway. He says, I've gained 10 pounds. And somehow this guy, the king, is actually quite proud of that. So we're talking about money here. He's saying, all right, I've gained 10 pounds. I've multiplied this by 10. You gave me $4,000. I've given you $40,000. That's a really great return on investment, wouldn't you say? And so the king says to the man, well done, thou good servant. You've been faithful with very little, and I'm going to put you over charge of much. I'm going to give you 10 cities to take care of. You've been faithful in what's little, and you'll be faithful in what is much. The second servant comes to the king and says, well, I didn't do as good as that guy did. I didn't get you tenfold what you invested, but I did get you 5 times what you gave me. I didn't get you $40,000, but I did get you $20,000. That's something, right? I mean, for me, I'd be happy with, 500% interest. I'd be quite happy with that. And so the king says, good job. I'm not going to put you over 10 cities, but I'm going to put you over 5 cities. He still rewarded him. But the last servant, the third servant that we find out, we don't know what happened to the other 7, but the last servant came to him and said, well, I didn't actually invest your money. I didn't take care of it as though you would take care of it yourself. Instead, because I was afraid of you, because I didn't want to lose your money, I kept it laid up in a napkin. I hid it away so that when you returned, I would at least have the $400 that you gave me. I'd still have the pound that you invested in me. And to me, I would say that, okay, if I did that to a bank, if I gave them $4,000 and I got $4,000 back a year later, that's pretty much par for the course, don't you think? That's basically what happens. Interest in a savings account is next to nothing anymore. But back then, it was definitely different. Usually, interest was very high. And even today, most men, if you're looking at any kind of mutual fund or any kind of investment, a retirement account, if your money's not making you money, it's not even worth having, right? You want to invest and you want to get a good return on your investment. And so the king was very wroth. He was very upset. He was very angry because this servant did not use the money the way that he intended for him to. He didn't buy, he didn't sell, he didn't invest, he didn't trade, he did nothing with what the king had given him. And he said, "You are a wicked, wicked servant. The pound that I gave you, I'm taking it away, and I'm giving it to the one that invested it and got 10 times what I invested in him." So what's the story really all about? I think it's very straightforward. I think it's very simple. Most of you already know where I'm going with this. God has invested in your life and in mine so many resources, so many things that we have no right to on our own. But God has invested them in your life to use, to buy, to sell, to trade, to invest, to occupy until he comes. God has given you 3 things I'm going to talk about this morning. You could talk about a lot more, but this is the 3 main categories of what God has given you. He's given you your time, he's given you your talent, and he's given you your treasure. Those are 3 things that he will give you. He'll never give you more, he'll never give you less, but it's up to you to use them for your good and for his glory. Let's look at your time. You've got, basically, if you sleep 8 hours a night, which is generous for most of us, you have over 100 hours in a week, right? You take away 8 hours, 56 hours a week for sleep. Okay, so we're not even going to talk about that. Some of you it's more, some of you it's less, but we're just going to say you got 112 hours left in a week after that. How are you using the time that God gave you for his glory? How much of your time, how much of God's time that he has given you, let's look at it that way, let's be specific here. How much of God's time that he's given you are you investing in eternity? Well, you say, okay, I come to church on Sunday morning for an hour. Okay, that's 1%. Well, I put that, I shared that thing on Facebook a while back, and that picture of Jesus or heaven or whatever, and I'm not really sure what it was now, but I shared that, and that only took a second. What? Oh, sorry. He shared that one thing, and it only took me a second, but I've got 300 friends, so I'm going to count that second for each 300 of them, so that's at least 5 minutes. And then, you got a couple other things, and I drove my sister around, and I did this, and I did that, and I served the Lord, and really count for yourself how much time do you really invest in serving the Lord. Really, just think about it. I used to get real upset when people wouldn't, come to church. You just skip church for no reason. And then I realized that it's just an hour out of the week. It's literally less than 1% of your time. And so for me, it's a big deal when people aren't here, but for them, it's like 1%. Who cares? That's like 2, it's like 2 episodes of any TV sitcom. It's like no big deal. You either get it or you don't. And you move on. How much of your time are you really investing in God's work in your life? Our time is valuable. But if your time is so valuable, why would you invest it in anything other than what God wants you to invest it in? Now, I understand people are busy. People have got stuff going on. I'm not mad at anybody. I'm not upset at anybody. But I have learned early on in my life that if you ever want to be happy, if you ever want to be fulfilled, you're going to figure out very early on what belongs to God and yield that to him. Because you will never find fulfillment. You will never find joy. You will never find happiness of any kind until you yield what belongs to God to him. And I believe that you can yield 100% of your time. Now, how many of us are really going to do that? Not too many of us. I certainly don't. I waste a lot of time, let's be honest. But I believe we can yield 100% of our time to God. And that doesn't mean that you're going to be in church 100% of the time. It doesn't mean you're going to be praying 100% of the time. It doesn't mean that you're going to be reading the Bible 100% of the time. But it does mean that you are going to use your time wisely and invest it to serve the Lord, that you're going to get a good return on the investment that you put in. The second thing that we're going to look at is your talent. The talents and the abilities and the gifts that God has given you. Some of you are extremely talented, and you can do amazing things. You can serve, and you can do some incredible things, not just in the church, that's part of it, but you can do things to serve your family for the Lord. You can serve your friends for the Lord. And you can use the talents and the abilities and the spiritual gifts that God has given you. Well, what's the difference between a spiritual gift and a talent? Well, a talent is something that you're born with, something that you have from the day that you're born. A spiritual gift is something that you get the day that you are reborn spiritually, when you are born again. Are we tracking? A talent is something that you're going to have no matter what. God had very little to do with that, with giving you that. And you're going to have that talent whether you're a Christian or not. Some of you can sing. Is singing a spiritual gift? No, I don't really think so. I think that's a talent. That's something you were born with. Is it something that you can develop, something that you can strive to better? Sure, yeah, absolutely. And spiritual gifts are the same way. Some of you have the gift of hospitality. Some of you have the gift of teaching. Some of you have the gift of prophecy. Some of you have the gift of many other things. We could talk about all of them. I did a series 9 months ago or so about the spiritual gifts. If you're interested, we can get a CD for you. But there are so many gifts. There are so many talents. There are so many abilities that God has given you. How are you using those talents? How are you using those abilities? How are you using the spiritual gifts that God has given you? Is God getting a good return on his investment? When he gave you the gift of prophecy, when he gave you the gift of prayer, when he gave you the gift of healing, when he gave you the gift, if you're curious about any of these things, if you're saying, all right, he's starting to sound like a real wacko there, just go ahead and we'll listen to the sermons, okay? It's not wacko, it's not crazy, it's, I'm not the guy in the white suit with the big hair and all this kind of crazy stuff. But when God gave you all of these gifts and all these talents and all of these abilities, he didn't give them to you simply to possess, simply for you to be able to say, well, look what I can do. He gave these gifts and these talents and these abilities to you for his glory, for you to invest and use those things for eternity, to make a difference in other people's lives. Last thing that we're going to look at is your treasure. These are the things that we talk about over and over again, and I sound like a broken record, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But the treasure that God has given you. Every single one of us has some material possession. Some of us have wealth. Most of us probably aren't what we would consider by any means wealthy, but God has given you some material possession. He's given you some money. And I believe that 100% of what I have belongs to God. And I believe 100% of what you have belongs to God. How are you going to use that? How are you going to invest that? How are you going to occupy that until he comes? Now, it's not just about money. It's not just about tithing. We talk about that over and over again, and I don't want to beat it at horse. We've talked about this before. Investing your wealth, investing your time, your talent, and especially your treasure is something that says a lot about who you are and how much you value God's plan for your life, and whether you truly appreciate what God has actually given you. I don't know, like I said before, if you're going to be happy in life, if you're going to have everything that you want, if you're going to have everything God intends for you to have, you're going to learn very early on what belongs to him, and you're going to yield that to him. Until you do that, you will never be happy. You will never be fulfilled. You will never have God's blessing on your life until you yield what belongs to him. And that starts with your time, your talents, and your treasures. The first sermon that I ever preached to this church over 2 years ago was from 2 Peter chapter 3. Where is the promise of his coming? And we all say, we believe that the Lord is coming back for us. We believe that Jesus is coming back. We believe in the rapture of the church. We believe that one day the trumpet will sound and we will be caught up to meet the Lord in the air. We all believe that. This would be a good time for you to say amen. And yet, how much has it changed the way we live? Now, I know a lot of us think about that a lot. I know that a lot of us are praying and a lot of us have our eyes in the clouds, and we know that the Lord could meet with us any day now. I believe that it could be today, and I think many of you do as well. But whether we truly believe that or not is evidenced by the way that we live. Because if, like Stuart, you knew that the person's house that you were taking care of, if you knew that that person is coming back today, don't you think that that would make a difference in what kind of party you throw, or whether you throw a party at all? So many of us are using and abusing what God has given us to invest, to use, to trade, to sell. We are abusing what God has given us with no concern whatsoever for the day that he's going to return. One day, I believe that every single one of us, it doesn't matter whether I believe it or not, the Bible says it. The Bible says in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, I believe, verse number 10, I could be wrong, I don't have it in my notes, But he says, I know it's in 2 Corinthians, that every man that's a believer in Jesus Christ will stand before the judgment seat of Christ. That's only for believers. That's not for unbelievers. Read it for yourself. The judgment seat of Christ, we're going to stand before God, and we're going to give account for our lives, whether they be good or whether they be bad, the things that we've done. I believe that every single one of us, myself included, is going to have to stand before God, and we're going to have to give an account for our life, the way that we've used our time, our talent, and our treasure. And it's at that day that God is going to either say to us, you wicked servants, I'm going to take away everything that you have, and I'm going to give it to those that invested, those that used their lives for my glory. Or he's going to say, well done, my good and faithful servant. One more thing before we close. You know that in this story, you might have missed it. It's almost a throwaway verse. You run over it, you don't even think about it. But in verse number 14 or 15, it talks about servants or citizens of that kingdom, the citizens that were under this ruler. They said, when this king went away, when the king went into the faraway land, they said, we will not have this man to rule over us. It's really easy for us as Christians when we see the world burning, when we see the world just completely rejecting everything that the Lord wants for us, when we see unbelievers or even people that profess to be believers but aren't really living like it, when our church attendance is down, and it's not just our church, it's every church, it's really easy, and I've heard this 1,000 times, that it's just a sign of the times. Right? You've all heard that. Many of you have probably said that. It's just a sign of the times. That it's because we are living in perilous times, as it says in 2 Timothy, perilous times where men shall be lovers of themselves and haughty and high-minded. They're not going to want anything to do with God. There's going to be a great falling away. And we talk about all this stuff over and over again. It's just a sign of the times when people don't want to come to church. We've all heard that. We've probably all said that. Let me give you a little hint. People have never wanted God to rule over them. Never. It's not new. It's not unusual. It's not different. From the story that Jesus was telling, they didn't want their ruler, their king, to rule over them. It's nothing new. It's nothing different. Why do we use it as an excuse for us as Christians, the people that actually are supposedly dedicated to serving the Lord, that are supposed to be investing in eternity? Why do we use it's a sign of the times as an excuse for us to be the same Kentucky Fried bunch of malcontents and apathetic losers that we've always been? Is it a sign of the times? Perhaps. Absolutely. It might very well be. I believe that we're drawing closer. I believe we'll be closer in 5 minutes to the return of Christ than we were 5 minutes ago. I think that's just logical. We are drawing closer to the return of Christ. It may very well be a sign of the times. But that is not an excuse for us as God's people to draw malcontent and apathetic. It's a time and it's an excuse for us to be all the more ready for Christ to return. In 1 John chapter 3, I'm not sure. 1 John, anyway, I'm not sure where it is, but it says in 1 John, look it up yourself. 1 John, it says, he that hath this hope in himself, talking about the return of Christ, what? Purifieth himself. If you really hope that Christ is going to return, as Jesus said that he would, if you think that Christ is going to return as the king did in this story, you're going to purify yourself. You're going to live a different kind of life. You are going to use your time, your talent, and your treasure to serve the Lord. You're going to invest it in eternity and make a difference with your life. Father in heaven, I thank you so much for all that you've done for us and for gifting us for ministry, for life, for truth, for godliness, and for everything that you intend for us to do. And yet, God, so often we fail, we fall short of what you intend for us. God, I trust that this week you would reach into the depths of our heart and you would pull out those seeds of bitterness and anxiety and worry and the sin that's so deep within us that keeps us from doing what you want us to do. That we would trust you, knowing that you have our best intentions at heart. That the only reason we're supposed to serve you is for your glory and for your good, but also for our good, for our own reward. We know that one day we are going to stand before you, and we're going to have to give an account for everything that we've done. Father, I pray for the members of this church that we would strive to be good and faithful servants, that we might stand before you one day and know that you are our God, that you are almighty, that you are on the throne, and that you are worthy all of our praise. We pray these things in the name of Jesus. Amen.